All right, number 17, let's call this one adulting. Why? Because not only can adulting be tough, beyond the financial component of paying bills and doing all the financial responsibilities that go along with growing up, the emotional side can be tough. Why? Because we all carry certain insecurities that it can be difficult to own. A lot of times it's just easier to project them, and that is exactly what's going on in this chapter of number 17, where God is going to make Aaron's staff bud, representing the way in which he is repeatedly reminding the children of Israel of the structure that he has established in the nation. Because underlying the repeated complaining, which is already, as we've seen, draining the relationship between the people of Moses and the people of God, the refusal to trust God is a reflection of their insecurities, and that is another thing that's draining the relationship. And so practically, if you have ever seen a time when either you've been in a situation or you've seen friends struggle in a relationship where one is insecure, having trouble trusting their partner, it helps when we can meet each other halfway. And that is not what's going on here. Why? Because this is a chapter that is simply one link in a chain where God, as he began the nation of Israel, he performed all kinds of miracles that should have been enough for them to trust what he was doing and what he had planned for them in getting them out of slavery and bondage in Egypt. And then with Moses being the one who was the point person over those miracles, it should have been easy to accept his role in what God was doing. And after God literally at Mount Sinai spoke with his voice so that the people would believe, they believed, but it didn't last very long. Why? Because after the golden calf, they needed once again to see Moses' face shining, and even having been frightened by the fact that his face was shining in a completely unnatural way, suggesting he had been in the presence of God. That didn't last long, because later on, when God is going to endorse his priesthood, he's going to literally accept Aaron's sacrifice with fire from God's own presence. And that is going to impress the people, but it's not going to last. Why? Because eventually we get to the dispute we talked about in number 16 with Korah, where God is literally going to open up the ground and swallow the people who are still doubting whether or not Aaron and Moses are his folks. And that brings us to this chapter where in chapter 17, he's going to perform one more miracle that is basically going to get the people's attention and cause them to fear again, when it says in verse 12, and the people of Israel said to Moses, behold, we perish, we are undone, we are all undone. Everyone who comes near to the tabernacle of the Lord shall die. Are we all to perish? And so once again, it gets their attention, but it's not going to allay their insecurities, because in chapters 20 and 21, they're going to provoke God and Moses again. And so the thing to understand about adulting is a question that we all have to ask. When we feel insecure, are we owning our insecurities or are we projecting our insecurities? See, because the children of Israel know what it's like to have insecurities projected on them. Pharaoh's insecurities were the reason why they were dealing with such bitter slavery. They were already his servants, but he was insecure about their success, and so he made it their problem instead of taking responsibility for what was really going on in his own head and his heart. And even though there are situations in a marriage, family relationship, a friendship, or whatever, where it can be difficult to trust because we simply lack the facts on which to base our trust, that's not Israel's problem here. Israel is repeatedly being confronted with the facts that suggest they should be able to trust, and they're choosing not to trust anyway. And so their insecurity is the product of failing to accept the truth around them. And so to the degree we have enough information to be able to trust more than we are, my prayer for you is my prayer for me, that we not be so wounded by the difficult things we've been through in the past that we're failing to accept the facts that can help us to find security in places we might be otherwise insecure.